Hi there, and welcome back to Saturday Story Time. This one, as you'll see by the title, is The Time I Turned Down Tom Jones. Now, I'm not sure if any of my American subscribers know that sounds really bad. He's a superstar, he's a legend. I'm sure you know who Tom Jones isn't, but I will put pictures in so that you get the idea who Tom Jones is. So, I've grown up working in bars and clubs. My family have owned bars and clubs, and I've been surrounded by music all my life. My father is a jazz musician, and my two uncles were musicians. I play clarinet and saxophone badly, and sing. So the music-y thing's always been there. So it started off, my uncle was a drummer in a resident band in an Irish dance hall. Then the man that owned the dance hall asked him would he manage it for him, so he became the manager. Then when the man who owned it decided he wanted to retire, he asked my uncle did he want to take over the lease to the club, and so he did. And he ran it as an Irish dance hall for a few more years, but it was becoming less popular than it used to be, and the crowds weren't as big as they once were. And he was looking to the future and thought, no, I want to do something different with this that's going to bring people in. So he decided he was going to change it from an Irish dance hall to like a somewhere for gigs. So well-known people would come and do a concert there and whatever. And he changed the name. We all said that'll never work, and it did. So we had amazing people that played there while he was leasing the building and running it as the TNC, or the Town and Country Club. And then eventually the people that owned the building decided that they could do that. So they decided that they weren't going to release the building, and we had to leave. And then they took over and did exactly the same thing we'd been doing, which was really horrible at the time. But anywho, one night Tom Jones played. And my mother has been a Tom Jones fan since time began. Her and her friend used to go and see him. Anytime they could get tickets to go and see him in concert, they used to go. So he was playing at the club that night, and in the middle of the day he was doing a sound check. So one of the women from the club phoned my mum and said, oh, Tom's doing a sound check if you want to come down and watch. Pardon me. So me and her went down, and to be fair, up to that point, I'd never been that impressed with him. But when we walked into the club, you walk in the front door, and then there's a wall with doors in, and then you walk through that, and then you're in the hall. I could hear him the minute we opened the door. His voice just boomed, and I have never in my life heard anyone sing that well. And then we walked through the next doors into the hall to see that he was stood there singing without a microphone to a full backing band, and he was louder than they were. Absolutely madness. I couldn't believe it. Anywho, so we stood there and watched him for a while, and then he had a break in between songs, and my mum had bought this book about him. So she walked up to the stage with me, and she had the book in her hand, and she looked up at him, and then she lost all wherewithal of herself. Couldn't talk, couldn't speak, couldn't blink, couldn't do anything. And so I handed him the book and a pen, and she said, can you sign this? And that was all she got out. And he said, to who? And I said, Kathleen. And he looked at her and he said, is that with a K or a C? And she just stood there dumbstruck, staring at him. So I said it's okay, and we both laughed, and he signed the book, and that was that. And then everybody went about their business. So we went back later in the night to watch the show. We decided neither of us were working that night. We were going to go in and watch the show. So we watched the show, and then after he'd finished, usually in the cocktail bar, they used to come back up with their entourage or whatever, and whoever else was in the club at that point would get to meet them and have a drink with them and what have you. So anyway, he came up the stairs as I was walking past the stairs, and he just looked at me and laughed and went, "It's a C." And that was our joke. Is it a C or a K? Anywho, so he was smoozing with all the people and having a drink. And the next thing, my mum says, "Can you get him to sign this?" And she had a poster. And I was like, "Can you not get him to sign it now? You've got over the initial doodad, you know." And she's like, no, you do it. So I went over, and he was like, "Kathleen." I was like, "Yeah, please." So he signed it. And then, just before we were due to leave, she said it was recently his birthday. "I'm going to get him a bottle of champagne." So she gets this bottle of champagne, and she hands it to him. And he looks directly at me and says, "Grab a few glasses, we'll have a drink." And she says, "No, thank you, we're going home," and dragged me down the stairs. And that was that. And then so we were outside, and her friend, who'd got a kiss goodbye from him, was on the phone to her aunt. And she's like, "No, I'm not drunk, Auntie. I really did kiss him. No, I actually met Tom Jones." So I had to get on the phone and convince her aunt that the story was true. So we went home and had tea and toast, while I could have been champagning it up with Tom Jones. And then I found out the next day that all the people that were left, he took them to Stringfellows, I think it was, because Rod Stewart was having a party. I could have been at Rod Stewart's party with Tom Jones, but my mother got a bee in her bonnet, and God knows why. Everybody else says she was jealous. She thought he liked me, and so she lost the plot and said, like, "No, you're not stopping." As if, honestly, the man's old enough to be my father. He was just being polite, you know, "Let's have a drink because you've given me a free bottle of champagne." But yeah, so she's dragging me off down the stairs, and I could hear him laughing the whole way down. He obviously thought it was the funniest thing ever. And I was so embarrassed because it was like, my God, who would ever turn round and turn down Tom Jones? Who in their right mind would do that? And he must have found it really funny because it's probably never happened before. But I'm so glad that he wasn't upset or angry that we'd, I don't know, made little of him or whatever. But yeah, that was the night I didn't turn down Tom Jones. My mother did. So if you want to hear more of these stories, let me know and I'll keep going. Okay,